The following virtual Tisha Bav tour is brought to you by Congregation Ahavas Israel of Rabbi Eisenman in Passaic, New Jersey. It is sponsored by an anonymous donor in honor of the CCC, the Corona Chizuk Center. It is guided by myself, Mayor Eisenman. I hope you find it inspiring. All right, welcome everyone. Mayor Eisenman here, bringing you live footage from the city of Yerushalayim. It's the 9 days, it's the period of mourning between Rosh Chodesh Av and Tisha Bav. 2020 Tufshin Pei. Generally, the summer here in Yerushalayim is filled with tourists, and the 9 days is the period when I devote primarily to giving tours around Yerushalayim, around the Beis HaMikdash, where the Beis HaMikdash was, focusing on lessons from the Churban, focusing on what remains, focusing on what we can experience, what we can learn from the terrible Churban, the terrible destruction that ravaged and destroyed Yerushalayim some 1,950 years ago. This year, unfortunately, my friends from around the world cannot join us, and I view myself as having a role to at least fill that void and to try as much as we can to at least bring you, at least virtually, to those very sites. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully your experience and your Tisha B'Av will be enhanced by these words that I am to share with you. The Mishnah in Tainus, in the 4th parak, the Mishnah explains to us what is Tisha B'Av all about. And the Mishnah tells us in Mishnah Vav, Chamisha Dvarim Iruas Aviseinu B'Shivasar B'Tammuz. 5 things happened to our forefathers on the 17th day of Tammuz. B'Chamisha B'Tisha B'Av, and 5 terrible tragedies befell them on Tisha B'Av. Mishnah continues, B'Tisha B'Av, on the 9th day of Av, Nigzar Al Aviseinu Shlei Konsula Aretz, when the Meraglim came back from spying out Eretz Yisrael, the terrible decree that we cannot go directly into Eretz Yisrael, that terrible decree, that downfall of the Jewish people, that lack of love for Eretz Yisrael, that took place on Tisha B'Av. Number 1. Number 2 and number 3, V'chorav habayis barishonu bashniya, and the first and second Beis HaMikdash were destroyed. Number 4, V'nilketa Beitar, Beitar was captured, Beitar was destroyed by the Roman legion in the Bar Kokhba rebellion. V'nechresha Ir, and the city of Yerushalayim was plowed. And the Mishnah continues, Mishanichnas Av, because of these terrible calamities, when Av enters, Mimatim b'simcha, we minimize our happiness, our simcha. I want to focus on these events that are mentioned in the Mishnah. What remains? What can we still see? Bashetach, as we say in Hebrew. What can we still see on the ground? What remains? What destructions can we see from the first Beis HaMikdash, from the second Beis HaMikdash, from Yerushalayim of that period? V'nilkeda Beitar, what was the story of Beitar? It's not Yerushalayim. What took place in Beitar? What's that all about? What still remains? What can we learn and see from Beitar? And of course, V'nechresha Ir, the city was plowed over. What's the Mishnah referring to? You know, as a child, growing up in America, Tisha B'Av was, of course, a sad day. It's a day of mourning throughout the Jewish world. And I remember hearing the following statement, and it may have been in the summer, it may have been camp, it may have been in the Catskill Mountains, if I remember correctly. And in the middle of the summer, we had to stop our summer activities to sit and mourn Yerushalayim, and none of us even could quite understand what it meant that Yerushalayim was destroyed, what it meant that we did not have a Beis HaMikdash. And I remember someone said the following statement, we should cry because we don't even know what we're missing. When I got older and I came to Yerushalayim, I met Yidden who were really, really crying over Yerushalayim. Being here in Yerushalayim, you can experience, you can feel what it means that the city is not complete. And yes, on one hand, Tisha Bav in Yerushalayim is not the same. We're already beginning to see a little bit of the nechama. And how can you not? I'm standing here now outside the old city walls of Yerushalayim. I'm standing here with my friend Yoel from Judean Joel, and thank you so much for filming us. And today Yerushalayim is from the largest Jewish cities in the world. How can you not begin to feel a little bit of the nechama, a little bit that Hashem is once again loving His people and helping us rebuild Yerushalayim and rebuilding Yerushalayim with us? But at the same time, walking around Yerushalayim, how can you not feel the fact that the center of the city is missing? How can we not mourn the fact that at the center of our city, this Beit HaMikdash is no longer there? On one hand, davening Shachris at the Kotel, and since Corona, this COVID-19 began, I try as much as I can to get to the Kotel, more than I used to, because I view myself as some type of representative for all of Am Yisrael that cannot come visit this summer. And I try to get there often. And on one hand, there's something amazing. We could daven there so close, and perhaps the largest center of Jewish davening today in the world is at the foot of Ahavas by the Kotel HaMaravi. But the other hand, how can we not feel the Churban standing there and realizing that we're still outside? And yes, the Kotel's amazing and holy and special and so moving. But at the end of the day, we're outside and we're still not inside. We do not hear the Kohanim in the Avodah. We do not hear the Levim in the Shir. We do not see all of Am Yisrael getting together to the Beis HaMikdash 3 times a year. So hopefully, during the next while, during the time we have, I'll be able to take you to different sites throughout Yerushalayim and throughout Eretz Yisrael. We'll get to understand and experience better. What does it mean, Yerushalayim, the first and second Beis HaMikdash were destroyed? What's the story with Beitar? Come with me as we explore these sites. We have come down here to find what remains from the time of the first Beis HaMikdash. Can we still see remains of the Churban? I'm standing here just below the Har HaBayis, just below where the Beis HaMikdash stood. Next to me is a very large wall that's been dated to be a city wall from the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, probably a gateway, perhaps built as early as the time of Shlomo HaMelech. Not far from here, we find the seal impression of Chizkiyahu ben Achaz Melech Yehuda, one of the kings of Yehuda, of course, about 150 years, 150 years before the Churban. And just behind us, there's a large storage facility where we found remains of the destruction of Yerushalayim from the time of the first Beis HaMikdash. Let's go check it out together. We have arrived in what seems to be an administrative room, an important storage facility, probably from the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, just below the Har HaBayis, the Beis HaMikdash. We're a 5-minute walk from there. 12 of these large jugs were found, some of them with ancient Hebrew writing on them. They can make out the letter Shin and Reish. These obviously are replicas, but this was an important facility from the time of the first Beis HaMikdash. These are walls. I'm standing on a floor that existed during the time of the first Beis HaMikdash. This was all destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar Melech Bavel about 2,500 years ago. The archaeologists dated to the year 586 before the Common Era. Seder Olam, it's about 3338 from Maaseh Bereshis. This was found all burnt, destroyed. There's one place we can actually feel, experience, see the destruction of Yerushalayim from that time. Definitely this is one of those places. I have my Novi over here. And there's a pasuk in Sefer Yirmiyahu, Perek Lamed Vav. Talks about the 5th year of the reign of Yoakim ben Yoshiyahu, Melech Yehuda. And Baruch ben Neriah is reading in the Lishka, in the office of Gemayahu ben Shaphan, whose seal impression was found not far from here as well, near David. And Gemayahu ben Shaphan is a secretary in the house of Yoakim ben Yoshiyahu, and he's reading to him the Sefer of Yirmiyahu. Chazal tell us, the Sefer Eicha, and he's telling him about the terrible Churban that's going to take place. Perhaps it was in this room or right by or close by here. Unfortunately, the kings of Judah do not heed the words of Yirmiyahu. Unfortunately, Yerushalayim is destroyed. Hence, we found this room all burnt, all smashed, all destroyed. And the pasuk tells us in the end of Sefer Melachim, B'chodesh HaChamishi, the month of Av, B'shiva l'chodesh, on the 7th day of the month, Nebuchadnezzar comes to Yerushalayim, enters the city. Vayisroifes Beis Hashem, and he burns the house of Hashem. And Chazal explains on the 9th day, the night of the 9th, and into the 10th, as Yirmiyahu tells us, he's burning the Beis Hamikdash 5 minutes from here. Ves Beis HaMelech, the house of the king. This is definitely one of the houses of the king. Ves Kol Batei Yerushalayim, all the homes of Yerushalayim. Saraf Ba'esh, he burns in a fire, and Yerushalayim is destroyed, and it stayed here, and we found here ashes and remains and ruins, and all this we found over here at this very site, burnt and smashed, as the pasuk tells us in Sefer Melachim. I'd like to just end off with a nevuah about Yirmiyahu, and Yirmiyahu tells us in Perek Lamed Gimel, Ki choy amar Hashem Elokei Yisrael, talking about the Batei Yirazois, the homes of the city that were smashed, that were destroyed. Hashem destroyed Ba'apil v'chamasi, that I destroyed him in my anger, and the pasuk tells us, V'ashrivoisi eshvus Yehuda, I'll return the people of Yehuda. Uvenisem kivarishoina, you'll build them as they were originally. And the pasuk continues, Koyamar Hashem oidi shamam hamakoyim hazeh, in this very place where you see the homes of Yehuda destroyed and smashed, you'll hear again the words we are all so familiar with, Kol sasayim v'kol simcha, kol chasam v'kol kala. At this site where Yerushalayim was destroyed, it'll one day be rebuilt, and you'll hear the song and the dance of the simcha and the sasan, of the chasan and the kala. Ki oshiv eshvus ha'aretz kivarishoina amar Hashem, I'll return those who are exiled like they were originally. Baruch Hashem, today we are zeichet to see the return of the Jewish people to Yerushalayim, and Be'eshron be zeichet to see the full fulfillment of this nevuah here in Yirmiyahu. We are continuing exploring and finding and seeing the sites where the destruction of Yerushalayim took place some 1,950 years ago that we commemorate on Tisha Bav. We are standing here below the city street of Yerushalayim, the street that was used by the Oli Regel to get to the Beis Hamikdash some 2,000 years ago. Take a look at this diagram. We can see this is the street. We can see the Oli Regel as they walk up the street towards the Beis Hamikdash. Below the street, this is where we are right now. We are inside the drainage channel. It's a channel that was used primarily as a drainage channel to drain the water of Yerushalayim during the heavy rains of the winter. Come with me as we explore the drama that took place in this tunnel as Yerushalayim was burning above. We are continuing our walk now through the drainage channel of Yerushalayim. This is an amazing find. This was found by the wonderful people and the amazing organization Ir David, the city of David Park over here in Jerusalem. And this was carved out below the city street of Yerushalayim 2,000 years ago. Take a look at the arched roof. This is the style that was used probably during the days of Hordas HaMelech, King Herod. And it's below the city street. The average person, myself, probably most of us in the crowd, would have lived in Yerushalayim, and just like you never opened up the manhole on your local main street to see what's below, you probably never would have come down here. You would have walked on the city street above, and we're going to get there soon. You would have walked there on the way to the Beis Hamikdash. You would have walked here when you visited Yerushalayim. However, city workers, they would have come down here to keep the drainage system clean. Come with me as we walk through the tunnel. We are here now in the summer. Till today, in the winter, when I come down here with tourists, when there were tourists. This would many times be closed due to flooding. Obviously in the summer, in Israel in the summer, it doesn't rain. It only rains primarily between Sukkot and Pesach in the winter months. The tunnel is dry like it is today. In the summer of the year of the Churban, the tunnel was dry. However, Josephus, Yosef and Matityahu Kohen, the famous Jewish Roman historian who records for us what happened during the Churban, tells us that after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed on the 9th of Av, the last Jewish fighters of Yerushalayim, the last Jewish survivors of Yerushalayim, come down to below the city tunnels. And if you would have been here during that summer, it probably would have been quite crowded. Hundreds of refugees from the city above were trying to squeeze down to the tunnel below. And down here in the tunnel, when the archaeologists began to excavate over here, they found actual pots, actual cooking pots from the time of the Churban. Like a pot you would cook your cholent in today. What was surprising and amazing was that these pots were full. They weren't broken. They weren't pottery shards. They were full pots. As if someone descended to the tunnel below to eat his food, to have a picnic in a tunnel. Who has a picnic in a drainage tunnel? And the answer is, of course, like Yosef and Matityahu tells us, like Josephus tells us, the last survivors were escaping down to these tunnels, and they were bringing with them their food. And they're trying to escape. Probably they were trying to run south towards the Kidron Valley, towards the area we came from. Perhaps trying to run out towards the desert. Perhaps to try and make their way to Masada. But more than anything, they were trying to escape the Romans. And they probably hear their boots as they walk on the street above. Eventually, we know the city street was smashed, and the Romans, the legionnaires, descended down into the tunnel and probably killed anyone they could. As we stand here in this tunnel, this month of Av, this Tisha Bav, we could feel a little bit what it must have felt like during that month of Av in the year 71,950 years ago. This is it. This is the place. This is where I am standing right now. This is the Churban. If there's one site in Yerushalayim when I can really show you the Churban of the Beis Hamikdash, the Churban of Harabayis, this is it. I'm standing in it right now. I am standing on a street. This is the very street where our forefathers walked on their way to the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. This is the same exact street the Tanoim walked on, the main street of Yerushalayim. It was uncovered by the archaeologists after the 6-day war. And the archaeologists found on this street piles and piles and piles of stone. These are the stones of the Kaisel HaMaravi. These are the stones of the western wall of Harabayis. Many of these stones still have the Herodian situt, the Herodian frame that we're so familiar with from stones of the Kaisel. And these stones are the stones that were thrown down here by the Romans from the top layers of the Kaisel, from the Harabayas, perhaps stones of the Beis Hamikdash itself, huge white stones, limestones that were quarried here in Yerushalayim, were used to build the Beis Hamikdash, and after the Romans burnt and destroyed and plundered whatever they can, the Romans then threw the stones down, and the stones basically waited for us. So on one hand, as we stand here, there's no This is the place we sit here and we cry and we mourn and we realize, look at these unbelievable stones. These are literally the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. I'm literally standing amongst the ruins of the Beis Hamikdash. And this is the place to feel Tisha Bav and mourn Yerushalayim. On the other hand, we can feel here a little bit of the Nechama, a little bit of the comfort that we're getting on Tisha B'Av. The Gemara tells us that Hashem took out His wrath, not on the Jewish people, but on the stones of the Beis Hamikdash. He didn't destroy the Jewish people during the time of the Churban. The Jewish people survived, but the Beis Hamikdash itself was destroyed. And these stones were thrown down here, but Am Yisrael survived. And Am Yisrael is still here. And we have come back here to Yerushalayim. And it's incumbent upon us to fix the Averis, the Sinas Chinam that led to the destruction. And Bezat Hashem, Bizayche, to put these stones back into place. And Bizayche to see Yerushalayim fully rebuilt. Amen. We are standing here in Yerushalayim, just next to the Kaisel, next to Har HaBayis, next to where the Beis Hamikdash stood. Around me we could see artifacts that were found in the excavations of the southern wall. And next to me is a pillar. It's a Roman pillar. The inscription on the pillar reads in Latin, Fretensis X, Legion X, the 10th legion of the Roman army. This is what's left of the 10th legion here in Yerushalayim, that legion that was ruled by Titus, the legion that destroyed the Beis Hamikdash here in Yerushalayim, the legion that burnt Yerushalayim. Today there's some type of victory that this is all that's left from the 10th legion. Well, of course, Am Yisrael is once again here in Yerushalayim. May it be continued to be rebuilt. From here of Yameinu.